Today's webinar is about securing your data with the Altvia platform and the various products within it. And I'm your host. My name is Ray Grant. I'm our Director of Client Success here at Altvia, and I'm joined by my colleague, Rob Luckett, who's a Senior Technical Account Manager with us here at Altvia. So today for our agenda, we're going to talk about the importance of data security in private capital markets, and then ways that you can protect your data with our products. We'll go through a few different data security options, both sort of protecting externally and internally. Some additional add-on options from the Salesforce Shield product, as well as the ShareSecure secure document portal. And so as a quick disclaimer here, Rob and I aren't cybersecurity professionals, nor are we consultants, but we do have a good familiarity with the private equity industry and all of the different security settings and features and ways that you can sort of bolster your data security with our products. So here we're just going to talk about our products today and the cybersecurity features therein. But starting out just a little broader in terms of the private equity industry, Ernst & Young has done a lot of research on this exact topic recently. And a quote that stuck out to me from one of their recent research reports was, PE firms are a prime target for increasingly sophisticated and bold cyber attacks because they have large quantities of capital at their disposal and regular involvement with third parties. It's pretty intuitive that private equity firms are they have deep pockets and they're spending a lot of money and giving it to organizations supposedly with valuable intellectual property. So naturally, that's going to make sort of a tantalizing target for cyber attackers. And so, I think historically the private equity industry has lagged a little bit behind in this space compared to some other sort of industries, be it in finance or tech. But recently it's, we've been getting a lot more questions and requests about cybersecurity with our products because of some of the new industry trends here and the new threats that have popped up just in the past couple of years, not the least of which being COVID-19. Obviously, with remote work for all of our firms, the day-to-day operations have changed. People are working from home, bringing hardware home, using potentially insecure, home networks, things of that nature. And so COVID-19 has posed a lot of additional cybersecurity threats that we may not have had to address before, including ransomware attacks, phishing scams. I think in general, the trend we're seeing in cyber attacks is that there are fewer attacks now on servers and infrastructure and more attacks on individual employees of companies because they're easier targets because of those insecure networks and things of that nature. And then additionally, there are new requirements for all firms, including private equity firms, that we just have to keep track of for compliance purposes, like the EU GDPR regulation and the California Consumer Privacy Act, which has just increased the importance of transparent data, reportable data and activity, so where all of your client data, investor data, and where it's all being used, where it's living. Firms now have a responsibility to track that kind of stuff. And then lastly, I think the risks are greater than ever of a compromised database or email server, things of that nature. I think now private equity firms are realizing that can cause real brand damage and real damage to potential investments, and obviously real financial damage should any security issue happen at the firm. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Rob, and we're going to jump right into some of the ways that you can protect your systems externally. And I also forgot to mention in the beginning, feel free to drop any questions you have as we're going along here into the Q&A. In the Zoom window, you should have a button that says Q&A on your Zoom settings there. And any questions that have you as they come up, just drop them in there and we'll stop and address them as we can. So Rob, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Ray. And yeah, as Ray mentioned, the cyber attacks tend to be more focused at individuals, with things like, phishing. And so one of the best places to start is with sign-in security on the Salesforce platform. I know I hope that in 2021 everyone's familiar with what a strong password is, but I think it's just the natural place to start anyway. And there's also a few other features that combined with strong passwords can really set us off on the right foot in terms of sign-in security. So next slide, please, Ray. I'm just going to leave this here for a second to look at, but what you'll notice pretty quickly is that the difference between your password being compromised in a matter of minutes or hours and a matter of years or lifetimes is really just a couple of characters and a little bit of additional complexity. So let's take a deeper look at that here on the next slide. These are all of the password requirements that you can set in AIM. The first one is minimum length, and the common default that we see all over the place is 8 characters, but experts are starting to say that closer to 15 characters is what people should be shooting for. So if you want to set that in your org as a requirement, that's something you can reach out to us to change. Same with the rest of these things. On top of that, password complexity is going to just, make the number of characters that a brute force attack would need to guess larger, so that it just makes it harder to crack those passwords. So letters upper and lower is good as long as it's a long password, but if you add in numbers, it's better, and special characters obviously is going to be best. All of that combined is going to make for a nice strong password. On top of that, we can set password expiration. So we can require users to change their password every 30, 90, or 180 days. And the point here is that we force users to change their password before the time it would take to compromise a password. If you think back to the chart we just looked at, if it takes 50 years to compromise a password, you should be good if you're changing it every 90 days. But if something, if you have a password that is a little bit less complex, this still kind of adds another layer of security there. Similarly, we can set password history requirements so that you are forced to select new passwords each time, and we can control how many passwords are remembered in that password history. If you're changing 1 or 2 characters at a time, again, that's better than not changing your password at all. But setting an entirely new password is going to be, best practice. And what we actually recommend is randomly generating passwords using a password manager like a LastPass or a 1Password. Another thing that we can set is maximum login attempts, so that anyone trying to access a user's account can only attempt to log in so many times, or it locks that user for a certain amount of time. If you select the forever option, then an admin has to go in to unlock that user. So this is a really good place to start. I think everything kind of builds on just having strong passwords at the foundation of your security procedures. So yeah, reach out if you have any questions about any of this. And next slide, please. To layer on top of that, you can set trusted IP addresses. So you can control where users are gaining access to AIM. This can be set org-wide. So, trusted IP addresses for everybody. And maybe those are the IP ranges at your headquarters, but it can also be set at the profile level. If you have regional offices or people's homes, things like that can be set specific to a group of users. This combined with a corporate VPN that allows people to log into that corporate network, it is just going to ensure that only the right people can get in from the right IPs. Next slide, please. And then on top of a strong password, everybody should have multi-factor authentication, and Salesforce is actually going to be requiring that in 2021. So there are a few different types of multi-factor authentication that I'm sure everybody is familiar with, at least most of them. The first one is security questions. Again, those are pretty basic, and we've had those for a long time. They're super easy to set up, but some of those answers can be easy to dig up. If for example, father's middle name, wouldn't be impossible to find that if you kind of knew your target. Similarly, email and SMS are nice and convenient because everybody has a phone number or email address, but you have to trust that service isn't sharing those details and requires service or an internet connection, which is a common theme for most of these other types as well. Then we get into the two kind of more preferred methods that we consider more secure. One of them is time-based one-time passwords, or OTP. And for that, think a Google Authenticator or Authy are a couple of the well-known authenticator apps. This is one where self-service isn't required to get your keys, and they can't be intercepted like email and SMS messages. You do need to have a phone with a battery to retrieve those keys. So if your battery runs out, there's not much you can do there. I have an honorable mention that's not on this list. That is kind of the only one that doesn't need that, but it's a good secure method. It's a little less convenient because you need to open up the app, you need to go find the code, and then you only have 20 seconds or whatever it is to plug in the code. But really secure, definitely something that's more along the lines of best practice. Similarly is a Salesforce native authenticator app, and it's called Salesforce Authenticator. And what's nice about this one is it's got a similar level of security as the OTP apps, but it sends you push notifications. So you try to log into Salesforce and you get a little notification on your phone that allows you to just approve or deny. The nice thing about that as well is it provides info about the login attempt, where it's coming from, the IP address, that kind of thing. And again, similar to these other ones, requires an internet connection. There are some UTP keys that are little devices that USB devices that you can plug into your computer that allow you to access to your user account. But I didn't put those up here because they're a little less common. But that would be a third or a fifth option to look up if you're interested. And lastly, single sign-on is something that is a lot more prevalent these days, and for good reason. It's really a lot more convenient. You have one strong password rather than having to remember and use many, or find and use many if you're using a password manager. But one strong password and access to all of your applications. Some of the common services are OneLogin, Okta, and Azure AD. And this would be in lieu of multi-factor authentication in a lot of cases, but both convenient and secure. This is something that your IT department would set up. There's minimal configuration on the Salesforce side of things that we can help with, but we use it internally with our Google account, and it just makes everything easier without compromising security. Okay, and then on to, what happens if you have accidental loss of data. So shifting gears a little bit, what are our options in Salesforce if we lose data and need a backup to help restore that data? So the native solution in Salesforce is called the data export, and it's the ability to schedule a weekly export of all of your data in Salesforce. It's nice that it's native and it's free, but the downside here is that the export must be downloaded and stored manually by an admin. And when that backup runs, say it runs on Monday morning or Friday at night, it's only stored in the Salesforce org for 48 hours before it's deleted. So you really have to be diligent to be logging in once a week to get that data. What we've seen with some of our clients is the use of Druva and Own Backup are a couple of the main players in the space of third-party cloud-based backup and data management. And these are third parties that will be taking a fresh cut of your data or backing it up much more frequently. So think multiple times a day, every 4 hours or 8 hours, things like that. And while they do cost money, they are doing all the work for you. That data is stored automatically in the cloud, and there's a lot of tools to help kind of recover that data more easily. I couldn't really fit on this slide, what all those services provide, but basically it's a full feature solution to help you, back up your data and restore it much more easily. And then, what do we do if something does happen, if there is accidental loss of data? The first and sort of most basic thing is just making people and users aware of the recycle bin. So if you make any small mistakes, you delete accounts or contacts, knowing that that recycle bin is there is helpful. So you can just go kind of dig through and restore those records without, running around in circles, screaming for help. But beyond that is kind of more along the lines of what we just talked about, and that's using a backup to restore your data. If it's a small loss and you just have to update a few records, maybe that's something that you can self-serve and restore yourself. But we are also available to help you in these kinds of situations. But the key here is having the backups, having a plan, so that when stuff does hit the fan, we have a plan of attack to get that back in the database. There is a plan B or C, and that's the Salesforce Data Recovery Service. It's not something you should consider as your primary recovery plan because it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's probably going to take way longer than you're going to want to wait. I believe it's $10,000, starts at $10,000, and I've heard that it takes weeks to months in some cases. So that's just definitely a backup plan, but the service is available to us in kind of catastrophic scenarios.
Cool, thanks, Rob. And I think important to note there that the recycle bin only holds deleted records for 30 days. And after that, you're out of luck unless you have data backups or can afford that recovery service from Salesforce. And so, most of the topics in Rob's section there were, protecting from external parties accessing your firm's data, sort of transitioning there into more of the data protection stuff, and almost equally as important is protecting your data from your own employees and making sure people can't see things they're not supposed to see for compliance purposes, or edit things they shouldn't be editing, things of that nature. So Salesforce and AIM have a ton of options in here, so I won't get too deep in the weeds, but I'll try to lay a foundation and let you know what you can and can't do in here. And so what you can do is you can hide certain data from individual users or groups of users. And that's the object level, the record level, and the field level. You can grant system permissions to individual users or groups of users. And that can include the ability to manage and edit reports, to manage and edit certain objects, manage and edit list views, install packages, things of that nature. And then lastly, as was sort of mentioned in the first one, is visibility and access can be controlled on the individual field level in addition to the object and record level. So won't dive too deep into this model here, but on the top left, this image kind of shows us the different layers of security you can apply to your data in AIM. And it all sort of starts at the bottom with setting your org-wide defaults, as they call it. Is this data public or is it private? And then which profiles has access to that data? And then from there, owners of certain records are able to manually share one-off records with other users, which is not probably the most common way to do this. We'd like to be a little bit more systematic with our sharing rules, and that's where the role hierarchy and sharing rules come in. And so what a role hierarchy allows you to set up in Salesforce is basically a hierarchy of visibility in here. So, your manager can view all the records that you own, and you can view all the records of the people that you manage. And I think what this is illustrating on the top right is that doesn't necessarily follow your exact organizational accountability chart. It can be totally different, and it's just really layers of visibility from top to bottom in the firm. And so you can control it by role, but we can also set up our own just custom sharing rules. So there's a lot you can do in there. If there's a certain field input on a certain record and a certain object, that can mean that the record is either shared with or hidden from an individual user or a group of users that you establish. So the conditions for record level visibility are very flexible in Salesforce, which is nice. And then lastly, on the bottom, you have the example here of just in a single field. So suppose you're storing all of your final investor commitment data within AIM and you don't want certain users on certain teams to be able to view that. You can set by profile here who can see that field, who can only read only that field, and who can't see it at all. And so one limitation there is there's not really much we can do on the field level in terms of setting conditions, right? So if you only wanted someone to see investor commitment if it was a certain type of investor, unlike the sort of record level sharing rules, here the field level sharing rules are pretty static. It's either read only or visible by profile with no extra conditions. And so then in addition to sort of setting up all of your security layers for who can view and who can edit and access and report on data, AIM and Salesforce also give you some tools out of the box to audit what's been going on in your org. And so those primarily consist of login data. So who's logging in, when did they log in, and from what IP address or location did they log in. You've got also the setup audit trail in Salesforce, which shows you all of the administrative changes that have been sort of made in the org across time. And so that's not going to be necessarily record level. That's more changes to settings in your system and things of that nature. And then lastly, you can get individual field level history, which you have to decide which field history you want to track and how. And so a few examples of those here. Here's that Salesforce login history page in the setup menu. as you can see, it gives you just, I think it's 6 months of back history here, that which you can export to a CSV, get all of your source information about who's logging in and when. If there's any suspicious activity on anyone's account, this is the first place to look. If there were any strange changes to your organization's setup, this is the setup audit trail, also in the setup menu in Salesforce, where you can get that, I think, again, full 6-month history on edits to your org. And then on an individual record here, most of your orgs will have something that looks like this, where it'll say files and history, or maybe just history on the record. And in there, you can see the last time someone edited, the account name, or for a contact, maybe it's the email address. But this is definitely something that you want to go check in your org to make sure that you have set up properly. So you can track 20 fields per object here, but you do have to tell Salesforce which fields you want to track the history for. So if you need any assistance setting that up, definitely reach out to us and we can help. And so then finally, we have Salesforce Shield, which is Salesforce's product, as they say, supercharges your ability to monitor user behavior, track data changes, protect sensitive data, and prevent data loss. So this is all your standard kind of Salesforce audit and security features on steroids to provide additional security for your org. And it is an additional cost per user. And it's a trio of products here, which you can add all three or one or two a la carte. But the most common one we see is called event monitoring. That allows you to see, have full Big Brother access to your org about everything anyone is doing within Salesforce, viewing records, downloading reports, things of that nature. It's kind of an insurance policy for your org should you have a disgruntled employee or someone who changes firms and downloads lots of data. If you don't have event monitoring, you're not going to be able to tell what data they downloaded. You're just going to be able to see those logins or what records they viewed. So, and this doesn't work retroactively. So again, kind of an internal insurance policy with extra visibility and protection for your data. Secondly, you've got this field audit trail part of Shield, which allows you to take that field history tracking to the next level. Instead of the 18 months of standard history, you get 10 years and you get 60 fields per object. And it lets you do lots of other cool stuff like sort of setting your own compliance retention rules for each field on an object, and can also give you email alerts for deleted data, things of that nature. And then lastly is platform encryption. So Salesforce data is encrypted in motion. So when data is being queried, it's encrypted, but while it's not, and it's in the server, it's not encrypted at rest. And so that's what platform encryption does. It encrypts all of your Salesforce data at rest and just provides that extra level of server level security. And a lot of folks will get this just for sort of external compliance requirements. There are some caveats to this one that can sort of add additional limits and restrictions to your users. So you definitely want to consult your Altvia customer success manager before pursuing this one. But with all these products, Altvia can provide these to you directly and set them up for you. And so you can always come directly to us for any of this stuff. And the hard part is analyzing all that information once you have it. But luckily, Salesforce provides all these out-of-the-box dashboards for event monitoring and field audit trail for you to sort of, with minimal setup, really have lots of quick and easy reports to refresh and update and export all of that data that you're getting from those extra services. And then lastly is more on the document security side of things. So obviously, as we've been saying, cyber attackers more targeting individual users and email addresses. And so email security is a big concern, especially as it relates to transferring money and documents. And so that is where our ShareSecure secure LP portal comes into play, both in the fundraising process, the co-investing process, and the LP communications process. It's a very secure and simple to use portal that provides an easy place to access your documents without using email, with all the standard security features like 2FA, activity auditing. It's fully encrypted at rest, all the information in there, plus with other security features like dynamic watermarking on documents, collecting digital signatures, posting multimedia or videos, recordings in a secure way on the platform, and also managing all of your privacy policies, consent forms, NDAs, anything you need agreed upon with anyone you're sharing data with is all managed within ShareSecure there. So if you're already using ShareSecure and have any questions about any of these features, let us know. Or if you don't have ShareSecure right now and you're interested, let your Altvia customer success manager know. And so we're over time here, but last point would just be to review all of this with your team and with your Altvia customer success manager. We can help make recommendations for ways that you can bolster your security and help you execute some of the things that we reviewed today. But obviously, we're just scratching the surface here with the amount of sort of options you have in Salesforce. So please reach out to us anytime with additional questions. And thank you very much for joining.